Barely 24 hours after President Muhammadu Buhari signed the 2018 budget into law, top government officials, heads of parastatals and Nigerians from all walks of life converge on this hall for a breakdown of the budget. First, the Minister of Budget and National Planning gives an overview of how the 2017 budget fared and inform the gathering on the next steps the executive intends to take to understand why the National Assembly introduced some projects into the budget.
The implementation of a number of reforms, including significant spending on critical infrastructure, provided the necessary stimulus for the economy. And it is this spending, the expansionary fiscal policy and fiscal stance of this government, together with the various measures that we put in place that led to the economy emerging from recession by the end of the second quarter of 2017.
And next he tells Nigerians how the 2018 budget will be funded through aggressive revenue generation. Oil revenue projection is targeted at 41%, recovery 7%, and joint venture equity restructuring at 9%, amongst others.
The 2018 revenue projections reflect new funding mechanism for joint venture operations, allowing for cost recovery in lieu of previous cash call arrangements, additional oil-related revenues including royalty recovery, new marginal field licenses, early licensing renewals, and so on, review of the fiscal regime of oil production sharing contracts, restructuring of government's equity in joint venture oil assets, with proceeds to be reinvested in other assets.
Although the 2018 budget went through 7 months of delay before its final passage, the Director General of the Budget Office assures that the 2019 budget will not take long before it is passed.
The fact that this event is holding just a day after the budget was signed underscores the seriousness we attach to what we have come to do here today, as well as the sense of urgency with which we must now approach the execution of this budget.
It's 6 months into the year 2018. What Nigerians expect to see in the days ahead is the full implementation of the budget, which is expected to impact on their lives and the economy.
Well, that's what Nigerians always expect at the end of the day, that the budget will impact on their lives. But not what sometimes when you see controversy trailing, the signing of the budget and the president saying that some of the projects that have been included here are going to be impossible to execute. We're going to deal with that controversy this morning. And joining us to look at it, we have Honorable Razak Atunwa, who is the Chairman, House Committee on Justice. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Good morning, thank you.
We also have with us Dr. Sam Amadi, who is a senior lecturer at Bayes University and used to be former chairman at the NERC. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with you, Dr. Sam Amadi. What did you make of the president's speech at the signing of the budget? It was the first time we heard the president openly complain that the budget was not returned to him, despite all of the negotiations that had gone on behind the scenes, that this was not what he was expecting to see. But at the end of the day, he signed it so that, peace can reign and the country can continue along that path. What did you make of the president's speech? Well,
I think it's fair. The president is a politician, first and foremost, so he's talking to his base, as it were, to say, look, this is what I have, this is not what I wanted. And don't forget that budget is a policy, signals policy focus. So if it has been distorted, notwithstanding the validity of the intervention of the National Assembly, the president has the right to say, look, this is not what I gave them, or this is what I have. That's one. Secondly, I think the president himself perhaps has a sense that, look, these guys are clogged, some sense of irritation, with the National Assembly, which I think is also not good enough. A sense of undervaluing perhaps the kind of work they do or ought to do. So what I read of it is a president who is not happy with those distortions, quote unquote, and who also want to communicate politically that, look, we had a better deal. This is what we've got, and we'll do our best. And of course, in this fight between the executive and the legislature, you use every moment to make the other person look bad. And that's why the National Assembly also had to come back with a pushback. Essentially, it signals two things. One, lack of understanding and appreciation of the role of each other in the budget process. And secondly, perhaps unnecessary, given that the same party holds, controls the two branches of government, an unnecessary failure of relationship, because essentially some of these, if you look at the messaging going back and forth, we did not, it suggests a deep-seated breakdown of communication between two branches of government controlled by the same party. So it's also a failure of the party to structure much more, a failure of governance on the party side, because essentially when you see this kind of thing is when two different parties control different branches of government, you expect a lot of obstruction in the part of the branch. But here, where the same party, it signals some level of lack of cohesion in the terms of policy, in terms of politics of a ruling party. That's
trying to be, looking at it from an outsider's point of view. But let me quickly take on Honorable Razak Atunwa. He says, from the strand I want to take, is a lack of appreciation of each other's roles. The president made reference to the fact that the executive has, comes up with the projects, comes up with the budget, and knows the policy direction, and that's the reason why some of those projects are included. Many projects are included in the budget, and they're hoping that the National Assembly will be able to help facilitate the policy direction that the executive is looking at. You have responded, not you, but the National Assembly now has responded saying that we also have powers. What we've done is all within our powers, we have not acted beyond our powers. But some people will say, hey, shouldn't you all be looking in the same direction?
Well, Dr. Mahdi puts his finger on the button, actually, perfectly. It's a deep-seated irritation from the executive side as to the role of the National Assembly. Here is a National Assembly that's doing its best for this country, performing its constitutional role. The budget, having been submitted by the executive, becomes a document of the National Assembly. It's a bill, much as any other bill. It undergoes several stages of legislation, which includes interaction. What people don't know, actually, is that when the budget is submitted, let me take a few moments to explain it quickly. Look, the heads of ministries submit their proposals to the Minister of Budget and National Planning. He looks at it, he has an envelope, say he has 10 trillion naira to spend. The total sum of what is brought to him may be 20 trillion naira. He compresses it, cuts here, cuts there, fits it into his own envelope, submits it to the National Assembly. We take a look at it. By the time we invite, which we do invite the ministers and heads of agencies to come and defend what's presented to us, they actually are the ones who begin to ask us to increase here and there and make changes here and there, because it's not what the ministers submitted to the Minister for Budget and National Planning. So here's the dilemma. So they ask us to increase some things, change some things, and we do. We take account of it, owing to the exigencies of the circumstances. Having taken account of it, you come up and we conduct a public hearing, and then we come up with what we think is fit for purpose.
Are you saying, if I get you clearly, that all of the adjustments that you have made have been at the request of members of the executive? That you have not introduced any projects of your own?
No, I didn't say that at all. A vast majority of those amendments you see to the proposals brought by the executive come as a result of our interaction with the ministers themselves. No doubt the National Assembly would have some ideas of its own and input it into the budget. That's constitutionally allowed. It's not a problem. But back to the issue. It's not whether or not we performed our constitutional role, as Dr. Harris said. It's the irritation by the executive that they brought a budget, they expect us to rubber stamp it and regurgitate it and give it back to them. But I'm afraid it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world in a democracy.
Looking at the response, I've had the fortune of really kind of assessing it, and I see that the chief argument essentially for what the National Assembly has done to the budget is essentially trying to, as you put it, live up to the principles of federal character and all of that. Now, the question I want to ask you is, if the injection of all of these projects, totaling about 578 billion naira, is to meet that objective, then what, in your mind, is the role of local governments? Local government chairmen, councillors at the ward level, commissioners, state House of Assembly members that have their own constituency projects locally, if the federal funds are to be spent at that level of government?
No, I think you confuse two things. This is a federal government budget.
That's right.
Having done that, at the point of distribution from the Consolidated Revenue Funds, the federal government takes its own percentage, which I think is something like 50-odd percentage, and then local government takes its own share, and the states take their own share.
We're referring to the federal budget right now.
Yes, so it's a federal budget. We have no business with the local government or in the state. They take their portion of the distribution, and they make their budgets accordingly. So I think if what you're getting at is the increase. Now, the benchmark when the proposal was submitted in November last year was $45 per barrel. Now, we know oil has hovered well above $55 per barrel for the past 52 weeks. As of today, it's $69 per barrel. So we took a conservative approach.
We also know that there are trillions in deficits, though. We should note that there are trillions in deficits in terms of underfunding the budget.
Well, that may be, but the benchmark was increased from $45 to $51. That gave us an increase of $553.65 billion naira. And it's on that basis that we increase the total output of the budget. Because if you're expecting revenue, increased revenue, of course there has to be an output. Otherwise, you're not going to keep the money in a bank somewhere. You have to spend it. So we make appropriations for it. Now, that's perfectly legitimate. Now, so again, what you see is a government, an executive, who thinks that they will submit a budget to us, rubber stamp it, and get it back. It's not going to happen.